It's Saturday, December 14th, 2013. I'm Jimmy Principe.
I'm Sydney Foster.
And I'm Trey Comstock, putting your final orders because this is Tech's Last Call, episode 54. Your last call for Tech News of the Week. Tonight, Jimmy Instagrams old things with old filters. Sydney brings you the latest in interplanetary hydrogeology. And I decry spying throughout the world of Warcraft. But we start tonight with Microsoft flip-flopping over yet another feature.
Surprise, surprise.
Microsoft is on the threshold of making everything that was old new again. Over the past few weeks, you'll understand that pun in a second, over the past couple weeks, rumors about Microsoft's next version of Windows, due out in spring 2015 and codenamed, yes, Threshold, have been leaking out. There are two big pieces of news this week. Mary Jo Foley at ZDNet is claiming that she has sources saying that there will be 3 versions of the new operating system. One focused on the kind of modern UI Metro style in Windows Store that will be for phones, tablets, and kind of Chromebook, netbook-sized laptops. So
they're bringing back the netbook.
Well, I mean, no, there's just low-powered, cheap laptops might be able to run this one as a Chromebook alternative.
Okay.
So kind of, I guess. There will be a more traditional kind of desktop consumer version that will look, kind of more like what I think Windows 8.1 looks like right now. And there will be a kind of more enterprise-focused version because guess what? They have other needs. Paul Thurrott added to this by reporting that the 2 desktop versions may bring back the full start menu rather than the just start button that we saw the return in 8.1. So this is where you hit the start button and that little, menu of very useful tools pops up right there. That could be coming back. Obviously not in the more Metro focused version, but in the 2 more desktop focused versions. Oh, also you'll be able to run Metro apps as Windows in the desktop. I know, it's
you can
crazy.
Run Windows on Windows?
On Windows.
Oh,
programs
man.
in Windows will run in Windows. It's fascinating. The whole idea seems to be that Microsoft is on the quote-unquote threshold of one Windows to rule them all. They're not quite there yet. Right now they're at 3 Windows based on a common core, but still. So what aspect of this news catches y'all's attention?
What? It's a change. It's the little things.
Yes.
I personally, I really don't care if they bring back the actual start menu versus the Metro interface. I'm running Windows 7 on this machine here, and I use Windows 7 at work. I use Windows 8 on my laptop, and I use Windows 8 on my Media Center PC because I have more computers than I need. And frankly, it doesn't make a lick of difference. On my laptop, it matters because it's a touchscreen interface, and so I like the fact I can click the apps. But even then, so much of the stuff I'm using is for Windows 7, like Lightroom and Photoshop and things like that. So it doesn't really matter. Everything's running in the desktop anyways. And then for those specific games and things that are optimized for Metro, where I want them to be full screen, then I use that. But
see, for me, I am actually interested in the return of the start menu just because I use it. I use the start menu. I find it a very useful piece of UI. Just like I find Apple's dock a very useful piece of UI. And if they ever go to the mission control as the only way to launch apps in OS X, I'm going to be mad because the dock is just a handy piece of UI. I get pretty basic, but
the start menu is the right side of the Charms menu. That's what it is. That's actually the start menu.
Essentially, as I ruined the broadcast. But I use that kind of all programs that jump quick to my documents, that jump quick to control panel. Jump quick to control panel.
It's in the That's why I said it's in the right Charms menu.
I get that, but it's still not as well organized as it is in the start menu.
Yeah, but I don't know. This makes me kind of sad for Microsoft. It's, they tried to do something new and innovative, and we all went, no, change, please, stop. So instead of trying to improve upon the changes that they made, they're just saying, fine, forget it. We'll just go back to what we were doing before.
Not exactly.
It's no way to make, I mean, you can't make change if as soon as something changes and people don't like it, instead of innovating on said change, you reverse course.
I hear what you're saying, but that's not actually what's happening. Because they're reversing course on the places where it makes sense to reverse course. What good is Windows 8 Windows 8 interface-wise on a desktop? It's not.
Oh, it's not, and I agree with that.
And so those are the versions where they're reversing. There's still going to be this Metro-focused version for the devices where that makes sense, like the Surface. Why on earth does the Surface have a desktop mode? What good is the desktop mode on the Surface? It
makes you feel warm and fuzzy on the inside.
Yes, but it's worthless.
But I'd also say that you have, desktops like what I'm running on right now, where this is not a touchscreen monitor. This is not, everything I'm using is a keyboard and mouse to interface with this machine. But my laptop is running presumably the same version as this would be running for Windows 8.1.
Well, they're
or
not saying
Windows
that those
9 or whatever.
It's probably going to be 8.2.
So regardless.
I see where you're going. I'll bet you can still have the full Metro experience within the consumer-oriented version.
Yeah,
it will
I
just
think that
also include the desktop.
I think as long as what they do is that what they did for classic start menu when they went to Windows XP, where you could change the look so it would look like Windows 95 if you really, really wanted it, but look like, not operate like, look like. Well, early
Assuming
XP,
it was a blue screen with just a couple lines of white text. So it would look like Windows 95.
Asking you to restart your computer?
Yeah. Actually informing you. It's not asking you. It's look, you might want to do something about this. I can't tell you. Funny story about that. So my father-in-law upgraded to Windows 7. And I was like, it's not going to crash. It's not going to crash. It was the first time he ever saw the blue screen of death was on Windows 7.
I thought on Windows 7 it went to a black screen of death.
Maybe it was. He told me it was a blue screen, but whatever.
Supposed to be much happier. Oh no! If you really screw it up, it'll go to a blue screen of death.
But I think to a certain extent we're bearing the lead here. Phone and RT are now going to be the same operating system,
right? And I think the other
and share the same apps.
Well, and something we're not talking about this week is that there are rumors that Microsoft is going to make Windows Phone and Windows RT free.
Interesting.
So if they do that and they have this version, specifically with this version, and they're targeting the Chromebook, because the Chromebooks, it looks like if Google keeps doing what they're doing, they've incrementally made them better and better and better. And the fact that we're more and more connected as like a society,
sure.
So having a plan for your Chromebook doesn't seem outside the norm, then it seems like that could actually be what the netbook always was supposed to be.
Well, I mean,
good battery life,
low
power,
cheap.
I
think you combine that with this now will make Windows tablets be able to be what Windows tablets need to be.
Right. Well, like the 8.1 powered Dell.
The 8-inch Dell.
8-inch thing. What is that stupid thing called?
Who
the
knows?
Dell Streak. Oh wait, no, not that.
That was the 5-inch, and it was bad.
That was
their phablet essentially. Back before phablets were really a thing, they were really ahead of the curve with a 5-inch.
Right, everyone told them that it was too big. Was the other funny thing about that?
Yeah, and
now you have the Galaxy Mega.
No, and the Pad phone is launching in the U.S.
Oh yeah, we're not talking about that either. But
it's just these big phone things are taking off.
Yeah. I think that integrating all of that into one version is logical, and we really have to ask why they haven't done that already.
But also the idea of making that free, right? So right now, that Dell thing bases it like $250. They were selling it for $100.
No, it's $300. $300.
So base it $100. $300.
It has an Atom processor in it.
Has an Atom processor. But my point is, they were selling that thing for $100 on Cyber Monday or whatever.
Yeah.
If you take the cost of a version of Windows out of that price. Think about that.
It's now $200.
It's now $200, or it's now
competing with Android.
$250 for an 8-inch device running on an x86-based processor.
But here's the interesting question with that: do you then, because you're licensing it to other people, do you have to charge for Office?
Yeah. No. Yes.
And Office becomes like a $20 app package.
Yeah. Sure. Office for whatever
RT
this version.
devices.
It would be Office for Windows Store. So these kind of smaller devices with the potentially free app version of the operating system are based around the idea of Windows Store apps. So you make Office for Windows Store, and that will work on x86 or ARM, theoretically, if this rumor is true. But Mary Jo is pretty good at her sourcing. This is not just some say.
This is Mary Jo says.
This is Mary Jo Foley, and she's her and Paul Thurrott are both quite respectable in this department. So what you're talking about here is these are based around Windows Store. You have a watered-down version of Office that's the Windows Store version for these lower-powered devices that run on either architecture, and they share an app store. So you never have that system. Well, RT has no apps. Whatever apps Windows Phone has, Windows RT equivalent devices have. And whatever tablets, whatever architecture they're running, have these apps. So it starts to be at least one app store to rule them all, which is a huge step forward.
Sydney, you have an RT device. Is that something that you think would actually be useful, having those phone apps on a 10-inch RT device?
Well, I think
have you run into that problem?
Well, I think if I were a Windows Phone user as well, that would be helpful and possibly would be something, because I've talked before about, I really personally, I may be the only person in the world, but I really like the modern UI as it presents on the surface, to the extent that it makes me vaguely interested in a Windows Phone, and I feel like if it could have app parity across devices, that might be something that would encourage me further to take a step in the direction of Windows Phone, just because it's nice to have your apps be able to sync across devices. So I can definitely see that being a draw and being beneficial, and maybe hopefully, because I think part of the problem is that there's so much confusion with the 27 different app stores for various Windows devices. So I feel like this would help clear some of that up as well.
What Windows currently has 4.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which might as well be 27.
And then there's all the legacy stuff on x86. But this way you could get Instagram on your Windows RT tablet.
Hooray.
Great.
I know,
what
Trey.
we needed.
You're so excited about that, aren't you?
Yes, and they even have news of their own. What is Insta-Crap? I said it. What is Insta-Crap giving us this week? I was trying not to say that.
You were thinking about it way too hard.
This is why I write transitions.
Hang on. Everybody's favorite hipster filtered photo sharing software, especially Trey's, is becoming a little more personal. That's right. Instagram this week announced a brand new feature: the ability to send images and videos and text messages through the interwebs using their app to other individual users. Now, unfortunately, those individual users have to be on Instagram, which neither of my co-hosts are.
Nope, not a chance.
But I am. So
until they sponsor this show, I will not be on Instagram.
Oh,
well,
it would so be worth it.
Luckily, according to Kevin Systrom, the CEO of Instagram, it's not all about sharing photos, Trey. It's about sharing moments. And that's in quotes, quote, moments. And that quote,
is Kodak advertising from 1995, share the moment, share the life.
Yes, and we saw how well that worked out for Kodak. So
at the time.
And also, quote, communication is not about photography necessarily, end quote. I had this really catchy line about if it was all about photography, they'd be built into cameras, but that's not all about photography, so they're built into phones. Some really clever thing like that he specifically said. Each private conversation between users must, however, start with an image, even though it's not all about photography.
Or a video.
Or a video, yeah, but it can't start with text. You can't message someone without sending them a picture first. So, yes.
Okay, keep going.
But then you can text and send videos and, I don't know, send naked pictures like Snapchat. I don't know, something like that.
But these don't disappear in 7 seconds.
They don't disappear. Well, but you can delete it. And if you delete it from your device, it'll delete it on their device. Yeah, I know. Remove it from your device and their device, not from probably Instagram servers.
Or the screenshot they've already taken.
Right, exactly. Well, but it doesn't inform you,
Right.
unlike
It's
Snapchat.
the
Right.
only useful feature, which is why Snapchat is just for sexting.
So we all know how Trey thinks about this. So Sydney, does this sound like an actual like feature that Instagram should be really proud of, or is it a replacement for MMS that nobody is actually looking for?
I think it's interesting. I do, because I feel like people all the time, are taking their Instagram pictures and posting them to Facebook to start conversations that
Well, that's
way.
what people actually do, though.
Right. So, but then this allows you to have a more, I guess, contained conversation. Like if you're taking a picture that's a particular inside joke with one person, instead of being like, oh, post it to Facebook and confuse, 80% of my friends, I can send this to the person to whom it specifically applies. Kind of like I do with my camera and text message on my phone now, only with filters.
Yeah, but now
And
your
a
phone
worse
has,
feature.
honey, your phone has filters now too.
That's true.
Right.
I don't know. I don't use Instagram. I don't.
Well, the funny thing is that my Galaxy Nexus, I just did it again. My Nexus 5 has filters a la Snapseed, which Google owns, and they're much better than Instagram because it actually allows you to adjust things like contrast and brightness and white balance and things that you actually would adjust on a picture, not just go, ooh, look, random name of thing on the bottom and click it. I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
But is it a square?
It's you can make it square. There's a
But
button for
does
making
it
it
have
square.
to be a square?
No, it doesn't have to
Then
be
I'm not
square.
interested. I must only be interested in pictures in square form, like my Polaroid in 1990.
I mean, and so amusingly, because both of my co-hosts do not have Instagram, I tested this out and then uploaded the image to Google Drive and shared the link in our show notes so they could see the picture I took. So this is the route that I went for sharing my Instagram picture.
Look, I get the point that, yeah, okay, it would be great if I could only send messages to a limited number of people, okay?
Uh-huh.
That makes sense. Sure, not just for sexting, although
I think it's to break down the barrier of like, oh, I only use Instagram to post to Instagram and Facebook. Well, now you can use Instagram. If presumably you were to download Instagram ever, because they sponsored our show, then I could take a picture with Instagram and not put any filters on it, which they do allow. It would be
really, they
square.
allow that? How generous.
They do allow that. And then I could send it to you through Instagram.
Okay, I get that.
I think that's what this is actually for. So you don't think about using Instagram. Like, oh, well, I'm not going to use Instagram for this because reasons.
I can't send it as a direct message. So it's just a way to keep you tied into their ecosystem no matter what.
And part of Facebook's overall goal of
Eyeballs.
messaging everything.
Well, no, just never
On their
leave
servers.
a Facebook service. It's like what Twitter's. This isn't really a story we're talking about this week, but it's like what Twitter's doing with direct messaging, right? It's just they're playing back up Twitter's ability to do direct messaging too, because it's just this idea of keep you in that ecosystem. They've built these walled gardens and they want to keep you in these walled gardens. And Instagram realized, hey, we're losing people out of our walled garden into actually the other walled garden of our parent company because you can just send photos directly. Which you can do with
Well,
a
you can
Facebook
send
message.
photos directly in Facebook?
In a Facebook
I
message.
didn't actually know that.
Yeah, you can send all kinds of media. You can send Word docs and PDFs and MP3s and short
You
video
do this
clips of yourself. and
live on the show.
all kinds of things. And I mean, that's been there for a while. So, I mean, it's just keeping you within the walled garden. This isn't actually, sometimes it's about better sharing memories. Sure, whatever.
Not memories, moments.
Moments, yeah. Uh-huh. So
see how
speaking
badly
of
it compresses
moments, Google's having a moment of bravery and thinking of breaking into a new market.
Yes, Google is known for many things. Weird glasses being one. Primary
Awesome
colors,
glasses.
definitely another. And of course, serious servers and terrifyingly large data centers. To the extent that we thought they built a floating one for a while.
They have a patent for a floating one.
But
They
yes.
do.
So according to our very good, very dear friend, the person with knowledge of the matter. Oh,
I love
yes.
that guy.
My favorite
That
person.
guy.
According to that guy, Google is looking to get a little bit more involved with the building of said servers by creating their very own ARM-based server chips. So this is a move that's becoming more common across the technology sphere, with companies basically looking for ways to be involved at all levels of their products to achieve tighter integration between hardware and software components, basically everything being in-house. So the folks at Bloomberg are speculating that if Google starts making its own chips, this would obviously be bad news for Intel, who currently make at least $500 million, according to Bloomberg's estimates, make $500 million off of selling server chips to Google. So this is certainly an interesting story and interesting speculation, but do we think this actually sounds like a logical and a feasible move for Google?
Feasible, yes. It's Google. If they decide they want to do it, they can totally do it.
True.
But, I mean, logical, the only reason I could see for them to do this, well, A, they have more control over the actual chip design, a la Apple A7
Sure.
and
Yeah.
things like that. But the other reason is that in general, because Google's entire strategy is try to reduce the amount of power that the data center takes. They've been one of the ones that have been really running these data centers hot and pushing to ways that we never knew we could do before. Oh, you can actually run a data center at 95 degrees. And yeah, you're going to have some pieces fail, but they're not going to fail nearly at the rate that we thought they would fail.
And
so
right,
they've really
you
pushed a lot of that research
Well,
forward.
and they're able to do that. They're able to run them hot partly because they do it in a distributive way, so that when a part fails, it doesn't really matter. And so I think this fits in. Intel isn't really designing chips that are like, well, if a few of them break, who cares? They're like, they all must work precisely, and they must work exactly the same way every time, and they must never fail.
I don't think they're German.
No, they're not an American company, but they go with the point. So that's not Intel's design philosophy, and so their chips are expensive. Because they're great chips. And Google's like, we don't really need great anything.
They're also power consumptive, though, and they generate a lot of heat. And so if Google can use things that are not as good, that are a lot cheaper, that use less energy.
And just use more of them.
And use more of them, then who cares?
Well, there's also speculation, and this is a possibility considering, what we're looking at here is a leak from person with knowledge of the matter. There's speculation that this is simply, a play by Google to try to get Intel to offer them better prices.
Yep, and we're playing into that.
Yeah,
I'm totally okay with that.
We're going to make our own chips.
But I think that the counter to this
you're
is
offering us a deal. Never mind.
I think that the counter to this, though, is that Intel's talking about opening up some of their data centers.
Fabs.
Some of their
fabs, fabrication plants.
Fabs to let other people make chips. I think that is ultimately what would actually happen, because I think what Google would want more than ARM architecture is that they want the ability to customize the chip for their data centers. And so if they could do that in an Intel plant,
Intel still makes some money, less money, but still
they make less money, but I'm sure that they would make it's better to do it that way than to make it through have all that money go to ARM.
Well, I mean, but that money won't. It will probably. One of the things that we learned about Intel's plants is that they'll be able to do ARM too.
Right.
So probably rather than licensing x86 from Intel, which is incredibly difficult, and apparently only AMD is ever interested in doing that, it'll be an ARM chip, because ARM's easy to license. But it will still be, could possibly be, this is totally speculative, could possibly be an ARM chip fabricated by Intel for Google or whoever else wants to do this. Something Ayaz Akhtar pointed out on Tech News Today that I hadn't considered when I first read this story is Motorola at least used to make mobile chips.
Oh, no, that's true.
Yeah.
I had forgotten about that.
My Palm, they had it wasn't Snapdragon, but they had some other name.
Yeah.
My Palm Pilot had a Motorola processor. And so they have some essential patents relating to the making of their own processors that would have come with the Motorola deal. So who knows if that actually plays into it, but it kind of gives some chops like, hey, not only could they possibly build their own chips because they're just smart people and, they could, buy the talent, they also have a patent portfolio that would support that idea.
Well, and possibly even some infrastructure.
Well, I
I
have no idea. I mean, they cut a lot of
money. Yeah, they cut and sold lots of pieces. So that could have been something that went. But.
So who knows? But that's something else a wrinkle to add to this story that I hadn't thought of initially. That they have some of the infrastructure to do this, at least patent.
Some of the people probably that know how to as well.
Or they can hire them. It's Google.
They can just pay lots of money.
Pay all the money and get all the things. So something that your government has been spending money on is something utterly fascinating. So, Edward Snowden has finally proven to me that the government has gone way too far.
They jumped the shark.
They jumped the shark. United States NSA and Great Britain's GCHQ has sent agents all over the world of Warcraft. Yes, the latest round of Snowden leaks shows the government has sent virtual agents into Second Life and WoW and monitored communications on Xbox Live because of their potential as sites for terrorists to organize, distribute propaganda, and transfer funds. Doesn't seem like they turned up much actionable intelligence, but it did seem that they had a relatively robust effort, given they had to introduce measures to make sure that they weren't spying on each other. So, is it now true that nowhere in the world of Warcraft is safe?
This is awesome.
Yes.
I just love that there were so many of them that they had to introduce measures so they weren't spying on each other.
This is hysterical. Of course they did this. No one should be shocked by this because these are essentially virtual public places.
Right.
Right?
They're virtual
Especially
communities.
Second Life.
By the way, they're also probably on Facebook.
Yeah.
And
obviously
Twitter.
they're on Facebook and Twitter, but these virtual environments are essentially
MySpace.
virtual reconstructions of public places.
Sure.
And so just like James Bond moves through the parade scene in Brazil,
Which one is that?
I can't. It was Roger Moore. I don't remember. But there's one with a carnival scene. Just like James Bond is there and doing spy work in that public place, on the digital public place, no duh, sure, whatever. This doesn't shock me or surprise me. I just find it hilarious that this is actually a thing. And they're using, intelligence language to talk about the world of Warcraft.
See, when I heard this story, it made me think of the book Ready Player One.
Yes.
And I can't remember what the name now of the corporation was, but whatever the corporation was that was trying, going through the virtual world, the Oasis, trying to find the Easter egg, and all the people who were working for this particular company had usernames that identified them as such.
I don't think they did that. Went that
Clearly,
far.
they should have, so that they would be able to recognize each other.
Yeah, but they don't want to be recognized.
Right, but
this is a spy. If the FBI,
well, they could be slightly more
If it was the
clever than
FBI, it
that.
would be like person's username FBI.
Agent FBI dash.
I mean, if
whatever.
you have certain signifying markers, I don't think anybody else would figure it out. I mean, but I don't know. Do
Maybe
it in
they're all part of-
Navajo, and then you're good to go.
Maybe they're all part of the same guild. Now, here's what I want to. Here's was my big question: what level were they in World of Warcraft? Because there's only two ways really to level up, right? You either have to spend work hours leveling your character, which nowadays isn't that big a deal, but it used to be, a big deal. Or maybe some of your government funds went to Chinese gold farmers to farm up the character to an appropriate level for their cover. Also, how in depth did they make their cover story? Did they have I'm a 12-year-old gamer or whatever? Or did they have cover stories that were realistic backgrounds for their characters? So was the CIA cover department writing backstories for Ragnar the Wizard? And who thought up the usernames? Again, someone in the CIA,
somebody who just really wanted to play a lot of WoW
at work
and get paid for it.
They're like,
Hats off
this
to
could
you,
be a
sir,
place
or
where terrorist
madam.
things could happen.
Well
terrorists.
Terrorists.
So, speaking of terrorists, SteamOS is out, sort of.
Wait, what?
Gaming terror. Look, just go with it.
Nope.
Speaking of gaming,
Speaking of gaming and terrorism.
Gaming hipsters rejoice.
Oh, I got the connection. Valve, it's Half-Life. Half-Life mod is Counter-Strike, in which you kill terrorists.
Just let it go.
Got it.
Let it
Got
go.
there.
Let it go.
that was hard.
The transition is dead. So, if you are tired of all of this mainstream Microsoft Sony console
Because they're being spied on
nonsense,
anyways.
have no fear, SteamOS is here. So Valve has shipped 300 Steam Machine console prototypes to its beta testers and has also posted the system requirements and instructions for those of you who are just itching to build your own Steam machine and install SteamOS. So as far as SteamOS, Valve has said that its Linux-based gaming operating system, quote, draws from Debian 7 and optimizes it for a living room experience. SteamOS also comes with a pre-installed desktop environment, but then it allows users to download and install pretty much whatever software their little hearts desire. So, even though this is meant to be used for gaming, PCs turned into gaming consoles, if you really want to put, a word processing software on there, go to town. So Andrew Cunningham over at Ars Technica very helpfully states in his article about SteamOS that, quote, the installation process should be no problem for anyone who has a passing familiarity with Linux. Which brings me to my question. If a tree falls in a very small and selective forest of tech nerds, does anybody in the average consumer market give a hoot?
Right now, no.
No.
Because when I hear the phrase passing familiarity with Linux, it just
Does Ubuntu count?
makes
Yeah,
me
sure, Ubuntu counts.
No.
Yeah, I have a passing familiarity with
no.
Linux.
No, if you can install an operating system, you can do this.
If by passing familiarity you mean that I've heard of it, then yes.
Just load it onto a flash drive, and only a 4 gig flash drive. You need to make sure it's formatted in the right way, and then
Step 1, you cut a hole in the box. Step 2.
I was thinking more
Step 1, steal underpants. Step 2,
underpants gnomes. Yeah.
Step 3, profit.
My
So-
biggest gripe with this thing, though, is that apparently it'll overwrite all partitions, so you can't just put it on another partition, which is why I haven't installed it, because
Me neither.
one of
Yeah,
my
it
computers
needs
has all of my media backup, so all my photos, all of my totally legally downloaded and ripped movies and music.
There
Also-
is no legally ripped movies.
I
That
know.
does not exist.
I own physical copies. You know what?
You
Don't get it.
circumvented copy protection.
I have circumvented copy protection. Yes.
Comes the NSA.
The
But look,
bring it. I'm not scared.
Look, it doesn't matter right now. I think, Sydney, you're right. Like, very few people... The point of SteamOS is not for you to be building your own machine and installing SteamOS on it. It's these Steam boxes that will be sold for reasonable prices and just work. It's already installed. You just download and play games. That's where it makes a difference in any sort of mainstream way, and is in any way a way to give the consoles a run for their money. Right now, it's just a limited game catalog on a version of Linux. You go, I don't run this mainstream Microsoft thing. I run SteamOS. So you're playing fewer games on a more limited operating system. Congratulations.
No. They're playing more games than you are on your Xbox One.
You
I'm
have
sorry.
fewer games available than you do, not on Xbox One, on Windows.
Oh, okay.
That's
yeah,
my
no.
point. It's a much vaster library than the current next-gen consoles, but it's not all of Steam. Okay, it's a select, maybe a large number.
No,
but
I think that they said everything in the Steam catalog will run on SteamOS, because Steam made the transition to Linux 2 years ago. 2 years
I don't
ago?
know about that. They didn't.
Are you
certainly,
researching on a podcast, Trey? Don't do that.
It is. I know for a fact that currently not all games that are available on Steam are available on Steam for Linux.
Okay.
That I know. Now, I remember something like what you said as well.
Oh, no. That was for the... I take it back. That was for the controller.
Right.
That the controller would work
There
with
we
all
go.
games regardless of gamepad compatibility.
Right. That's sure, but that's not what this is. This
Yeah,
is
no.
this
I
is
was
the
just
Steam box, the Steam boxes, and those are still going to be a limited number of games. That makes sense if it's a cheaper box that you can just buy, and it just kind of works great in the 10-foot, living room environment. It makes no sense right now for us to just go download it and play around with Steam OS.
You know
Great.
exactly what I can do? I can just turn on Steam Big Picture mode, and guess what? It'll work the same way.
Yeah, exactly the same way. It's
With
just
the-
Steam
with
Big.
the wonderful HDMI cable that runs to my
No,
TV.
but it won't be the same because you can play more games on
Right,
your on your not SteamOS. So right now, Sydney, you're right. It is kind of pointless. But I think in the long run, or not in the long run, that once these boxes actually come out, it will be slightly less pointless.
Well, they also gave us some nice requirements that for installation you need a Intel or AMD 64-bit capable processor.
Okay,
That's
so
all
not
they
your
tell you.
iPad.
You need 4 gigs of RAM. You need a 500 gig hard drive.
Okay,
You need an NVIDIA graphics card.
NVIDIA only.
Yeah, it says AMD and Intel graphics support coming soon.
They don't show on the drivers. Okay.
And then you need I don't know UEFI boot support. I don't know how to pronounce that. And then a USB port for installation because you put it on a USB drive. So I mean that's not my 3-year-old enterprise level desktop. Has way more than that. So
Well, there's a key thing there. It requires a discrete graphics card.
right. Well, it also says AMD and Intel graphics support coming soon.
So when you get the Intel support, then it can run on laptops. Right now, it's going to be able to run on MacBook Pros, but not really because Boot Camp won't let you KO the partition that is OS X. So it's going to run on like high-end gaming laptops or PCs with graphics cards by NVIDIA.
All PCs that are older than Sandy Bridge are going to have discrete.
No, that's not true. They may have. They would.
Let me rephrase that. All desktops. You're not going to put together a desktop in most cases that does not have a discrete graphics card. It might be a very inexpensive graphics card.
No, because there was still.
Look, you can buy a graphics card for $30. I mean,
Right, but back in the day, there was even before it was system on a chip, there were still built-in integrated graphics cards into motherboards
oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
for a long time. I mean, I built plenty of PCs that weren't going to do
they're
anything.
integrated NVIDIA graphics cards. That's
Yeah, but those
Intel specifically.
but those still I don't think would be supported because they're not discrete cards. Actually, I don't know.
Well, it says graphics card. It's just, I think that's semantics personally, but the big thing that surprises me is a 500 gig disk. I guess they're assuming that you're going to use it for lots and lots and lots of stuff.
Well, no, I mean, think about it.
I mean, Steam installs are like 10 gigs a piece.
Not necessarily. I mean, look at the installs for your PS4 games right now. They're like 30, 40 gig. Same with Xbox One. That's where games are going. Is these kind of next-gen games are more like 40 gigs.
Well, because I downloaded Tomb Raider, and that's probably
That's a last-gen game.
BioShock Infinite is probably the closest thing as far as, I don't know, properties. How big is this thing? Does not tell me. Okay, never mind.
So, it's a pretty steep requirement. It's surprisingly steep, and it makes you start to wonder how cheap are these boxes going to be. That's my question.
But I don't think that's a high hardware requirement. There's no SSDs required. It's a low amount of RAM. It is a 64-bit processor, but like, seriously.
You're not going to be able to... Sure.
Welcome to the new age. 64-bit processors.
I'm just...
Are just
to me, the money has to make sense for these things to be in any way mainstream.
$300, I think, is really...
$300-400, sure. Something in there. But speaking of money and things you're going to spend it on, AT&T seems to be tired of giving you big fat subsidies on their phones. Company CEO Randall Stevenson stated to CNET, quote, "When you're growing the business initially, you do aggressive device subsidies to get people on the network. But as you approach 90% penetration, you move into maintenance mode. That means more device upgrades. And the model has to change. You can't afford to subsidize devices like that." So instead, he sees folks buying their own phones outright and paying them off on credit, basically through AT&T Next, or other carriers have similar
Or like how
programs.
T-Mobile does it.
How T-Mobile does it. With the new agreement between the big five carriers this week that they'll unlock your phone for you when your contract ends, this could actually eke out minor improvements for consumers. So Jimmy, will this make you buy more phones?
No, because what's written in there. So right now, I'm going to use the T-Mobile example right now. So if you buy a phone unlocked and you bring it to T-Mobile, your total price of service is going to be significantly less than if you took it to Sprint. If you went to Sprint and bought a phone on subsidy, same phone on subsidy from Sprint.
Sure. AT&T did just part of this is AT&T did just cut their plans by $15 if you bring your own device.
Yeah, that's true. They did,
which was one of our big criticisms of AT&T and the idea of AT&T Next.
Yeah, that they were going to charge you more money for nothing.
Yeah.
Basically, and so I really have to wonder though if what he's really saying is that we want to charge you what we're charging you, but we don't want to have to give you your phone for a less of a price, because right now they are making more money than me bringing my own device. Now, granted, they don't have to. If I bring my own device, then they don't have to worry about exclusivity contracts. They can just focus on the network. That's better for consumers.
Well, I think
the network is what's actually going to distinguish them.
They want to sell more phones. What they're saying here is we want to sell you phones more often. And so with the contract and subsidies model, I'm only ever buying a phone every other year. Unless, I'm a bad example. I have 2 cell phone plans, and so I'll get a new phone every year because I'm always alternating.
Well, I'm unlocked, so I can do it as often as I want.
But generally speaking, people are only buying phones every other year when their contract's up. He says, we can't do that. We don't want to do that anymore. Because everyone's on smartphones now, and so we want people to buy phones more often. So in order to get people to buy phones more often, counterintuitively, you get rid of subsidies, because that locks people in for the 2 years.
And it breaks people's mentality that they should be waiting 2 years until they get a new phone.
Right.
I have to wait 6 months till I get a new phone.
Right. So now it's, whenever I pay that thing off, now I can buy another phone. It's a vicious cycle, but you get the point.
It's like cars.
Yeah. Well, it is exactly like cars.
Except it's a cheaper item. And
Right, but the way you're talking about this, right? You buy a car, and then you pay it off over time. Most of us pay it off over time. And then by the time we've paid that thing off, we're looking going, maybe it's time for a new car. So you always are paying for a car.
Sydney, you don't like spending money. What do you think?
I don't like spending money. I'm just thinking of how long I had my last iPhone. I'm
2.5
just
years.
The wrong person to ask this. There are not things that will make me want to buy more phones more often.
Well, there's 3 years.
Those things just don't exist.
But I think that's the interesting point here. That I think that this could come back and bite AT&T in the butt. Because,
no more than it's going to bite T-Mobile.
Well, no, true. But I think that a lot of it is that if you think that you're going to make money off of selling phones, selling more phones by going off of a contract model, I think you're going to find that a lot of people say, well, but I don't need a new phone. I've interacted with people where they go, well, I don't need a new phone. Mine works fine. Mm-hmm. And it's especially owners of iPhones, but it's even more so just like people that don't use their phones at the level that, I use my phone, or Trey, that you use your phone. I mean, you and I, and we're so plugged into this thing that we see the new phone and we see the new shiny. And
you say that, but if you're looking specifically at iPhones, I very seldom see the new iPhone and go, I need that thing. Apple's
right, but every 2 years you see one and you go, that's what I want.
Apple's smart enough to take heavy advantage of the 2-year idea. That every other year you're seeing something that is a remarkable advance over what you had 2 years ago, regardless
of which year cycle you're on.
Right.
But I think that is really Apple has managed to work that system, but we've reached the point where phones are not actually improving significantly. If you look at a phone from a year ago, iPhones excluded. Actually, no, not even iPhones excluded.
No, not even iPhones excluded.
If you look at phones from a year ago, they're all basically the same as phones now. I mean, you have more 1080p screens, you have more big screen phones.
But I
other
mean,
than
how
that,
far?
they're basically the same.
Look, phone innovation is mostly cosmetic or feature. Since the introduction of the iPhone 3G, we have basically been, just slightly bigger, slightly faster, slightly longer battery life. We're in an incremental improvement. It gets talked about
iPhone 3G. The biggest thing you've had improvements are on are cameras.
Cameras,
screens
screen
have not reached the point where everyone kind of accepts that the phone camera is good enough,
right?
For the majority of high-end phones.
But my point is we talk about it like it's a revolution, but it's not. There has not been a revolution since the first two iPhones.
Right.
In a way that, the BlackBerry and the Treo were a revolution. And then it was iteration. And then there was the iPhone, and it's been iteration. And
I'd say the Droid.
iPhone and Droid together. Sure.
The innovation of the Droid in the sense that it was a touchscreen phone with a keyboard it slid out, and so you had the best of both worlds. There
were already slider designs before the Droid.
Yeah, but the Droid brought it to the market. The Droid was the first really big.
Well, the Droid made Android be able to be taken seriously.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's the true jump with the Droid. But even then, it's essentially innovating on. It's essentially incrementally adjusting on what the iPhone did. The iPhone shook up the market, and it hasn't actually been shaken up since. It's just been kind of iterating on the same idea. Better, sure, absolutely. They're becoming as powerful as, laptops. But that's not something that a consumer is going to notice for the most part.
Yeah. I think that this is going to have the ultimate effect. It's better for consumers, definitely. But it's also, I don't think that it's going to make people buy more phones in general.
Yeah, I think this is...
I think it's going to move more towards phones are going to be like tablets, where you have people with original iPads that are going, my
mother just replaced hers this year. Because
it was no longer supported, and so she went, I guess I'll upgrade.
That was, that device was 3 years old? Yeah, 3 years old.
So I think that this is going to bite somebody in the butt.
Yes, probably. Speaking of Android and biting, it's this week's gadget.
Yeah, this week in the rumor mill, we have reports of a new Android phone, which should surprise nobody, except this time it's from Nokia. Yeah, that's right. The Verge is reporting that, according to, quote, people familiar with the company's plans, end quote, that Nokia apparently is looking to replace its Asha software on their entry-level smartphones with a heavily skinned version of Android a la Kindle Fire.
Fascinating.
Those sources are also saying that the effort, codenamed Project Normandy, because they're storming the beaches, is full steam ahead and is slated for a 2014 release. Now, the really interesting thing about this is, as we all know, Nokia is going to be probably
Nokia's cell phone
Microsoft.
Division and
Microsoft,
Asha brand.
That department, that entire part of Nokia, will be acquired by Microsoft if they go through with this whole
acquisition.
Assuming that all gets approved, but they're still full steam ahead. And as we also know, that Nokia Lumia line is all Windows Phone, and Trey loves his Windows Phone. And so really the question is, do we think that Microsoft would consider keeping an Android-based low-end software for its, entry-level smartphones, or is this an effort in futility by Nokia?
Well, what's the cost of a low-end smartphone? What gets considered a low-end smartphone? When you have have $150 off-contract Windows Phone, why do you need it?
So the 510 is currently the cheapest Nokia Lumia phone.
Yeah, and off-contract it's like $150.
520. I don't know if I can find it. Yeah, I'm doing exactly what I told you not to do.
My point is no. I think they stop worrying about the Asha line, and they just sell a very cheap Windows phone with a keyboard, because there's nothing stopping them from doing that. There's reason why they
go back to the previous comment we made about Windows Phone possibly going to a free model.
Right. So I think, no way do I think Microsoft is going to be selling an Android product. They have spent so much time suing Android manufacturers that this is a terrible idea. They have to sue themselves.
And just I'm thinking all the marketing money that they have poured into Windows Phone. Windows Phone, you should get a Windows Phone. You should get Windows Phone because Windows Phone is the best operating system. Windows Phone, Windows Phone, Windows Phone. It almost seems like for them to keep on an Android phone would be admitting defeat.
I mean, my question is, why would Nokia then be pushing this? Because it sounds like Nokia is basically like, we're just going to pretend like we're not going to be acquired by Microsoft.
Well, sure. I mean, they have to. That's part of
the game. But like, I think that something like this, if you have an Android phone that's in development, why would you keep pushing it and try to get it to market in 2014? Because it's 2014 is when they want to release this thing.
Sure.
And kind of the first half of 2014 is what it sounded like from the articles I was reading on The Verge and Engadget. And so what are they doing?
Remember, this is one of the rumors that was circulating as to why Microsoft went ahead and bought them. Because they were developing this
Android phone.
This Android-based operating system, and the only hope that Windows Phone has is Nokia devices, because no one else is taking them seriously in any way possible.
Now, it's important to note that the Asha line does not currently run Windows Phone.
No, it doesn't. It runs Miga.
Asha.
And it runs basically their old OS.
Yeah, it's System 40, I think is what the old OS was called.
Yeah, that used to run on like my Candy Bar phone in 2000.
Exactly. It's that same OS.
That same OS, and
it has the rounded corners like previous versions of iOS.
Yeah, I mean they're great. I mean, as it goes, they're great phones. I've used a bunch of them internationally. They're very popular in developing markets because they survive. They are Nokias, and they're
indestructible.
They're indestructible. They have little keyboards. They're great. And I just don't see, if Microsoft is going to take the Asha line seriously, they'll just nix the Android base and make it Windows Phone, and just because it's not going to cost them anything, because they're making that OS free.
Well, except for what are the minimum system requirements for Windows Phone?
500.
That's the question.
Remember, the system requirements keep getting less.
Okay.
I mean, they keep making so it can run on even less advanced phones and different screen sizes.
And it's more the more advanced phones too. That they support dual core, they support quad core, they support 6-inch screens, they support.
But with the screens, and maybe it's not going to be a full version of Windows Phone 8 or whatever it's called.
More forking of Windows.
It would be, yeah. It could be a forked Go base, or they just say, don't worry about the Android thing. We'll just keep the. I think they just honestly, I just think they scrapped the Asha line.
Yeah, I mean, and the argument was also that by doing it, they could get access to more apps, whereas Asha has no apps.
No, I think it makes if Nokia was an independent company, I think this makes perfect sense.
They should totally do it, but they're not an independent company in the near future, and more than that, owned by Microsoft.
I just think the PR for Microsoft is a nightmare. I just don't see them doing it.
Agreed.
It's not worth it at all. But something that is worth it, and always worth it, is space exploration in this week's Space!
Space,
the final frontier.
Attention, all hydrogeologists, which is my new favorite word of the day. Today's space story is for you. So today we travel to Europa, the 6th largest moon in our solar system. And this particular satellite orbiting around Jupiter is a really interesting one to look at. It's basically an ice surface. The patterns on the surface suggest that there's a subsurface ocean that has the attention of lots of scientists. People really kind of want to know what's going on, but kind of the only way to get at it is drilling, so not much has happened there.
Baby, drill.
Indeed, on the moon, or a moon.
On a moon. That's no moon.
It's a moon. But now apparently Europa is putting on a show as well, so getting quite exciting. Now Europa is very similar to one of Saturn's moon, Enceladus. And one phenomenon that scientists have observed on Enceladus is that it shoots geysers of water that actually help form one of Saturn's rings, which is pretty stinking cool. So because they were curious as to whether or not Europa, being similar to Enceladus, might do the same thing. A team from the University of Cologne aimed the Hubble Space Telescope at Europa, and sure enough, they found what they were looking for. Now, the actual process of observing these water geysers is kind of complicated because obviously this is happening really far away. So what they're looking at are the UV wavelengths, basically looking for wavelengths that are associated with O2O and H2O molecules, because those are obviously what's indicating the presence of water. So they're looking actually at the light that's reflected in the area to find these water jets, and find them they did. So it's, as I said, very complicated. It appears that the main time these geysers appear is when Europa is at the point in its orbit farthest from Jupiter. Just based on the changes in its gravity, it looks like there are cracks or fissures in the ice near the southern pole that open up and shoot out jets of water. And then photos of it closer in, you're not seeing it just because, again, the changes in the gravity. So it'll take some more looking, probably some more photography to fully confirm the theory as far as where these jets are coming from, why they're happening. But for now, it's just really pretty cool. And I'm thinking this is possibly a future space tourism destination for us.
Yeah,
definitely.
lovely poolside resort.
Yes.
Well, it'll be like going to Old Faithful in Yellowstone.
In space.
So, I mean, this is the positive space news of the week. In other space news, the Chinese have landed on the moon. There's a Chinese rover on the moon that made a soft landing and is doing
robots don't count.
Digging research. And then Iran successfully launched their second monkey into space. So good for that monkey. I think it came back safely. They tweeted about it.
And so that we have a good news at the end of it, NASA has a robot that looks like
has a new robot that looks like Iron Man and is in fact
Valkyrie.
a woman. Yeah, called
Iron
Valkyrie.
Woman?
And it looks like it's intentionally made to look more like a woman.
So Iron Man meets Fembot.
Yeah. Kind of like Iron Man FemShep. Is really what this is.
Fascinating.
Yes.
Oh, space.
Something else fascinating is this week's last call.
So last week we shocked and amazed you with Jeff Bezos' high-tech solution to deliveries at the speed of Domino's Pizza. Well, Groupon this week released their response to Amazon with something a little more old school. Catapults, actually.
Tell me more.
That's fascinating.
As their clever video proclaims, quote, "We are talking about principles of package delivery that have been around since the time of King Arthur. That guy knew something about keeping precious cargo safe." And quote,
also, that's the Romans. Never mind.
I was about to say, catapults.
That's
timeline.
what, you know what? That's
further.
the quote. Okay?
I disagree with your timeline, sir.
You know what? Quiet you. Anyways,
Historically inaccurate.
also, apparently Groupon is all about, quote, great deals, great service, and medieval catapults, end quote. It's also really snarky and makes fun of, like, drones taking pictures of you in the bathtub. Who knows? What I really have
the
to
Vikings are going to invade my house instead. Wonderful.
I really have to ask, is when can I get Groupon to deliver flaming pitch to my doorstep?
And boiling oil, maybe?
And boiling oil and flaming bales of hay.
Greek fire.
Yeah.
Greek fire.
We
I
don't know
definitely
what's
need some
in
of
that.
Well, they
It
should
doesn't
get on
matter.
that since they know so much about history,
But
apparently.
I think that would be more something Bezos would backwards engineer Greek fire and then have the drones drop it on the catapults.
Now that just sounds horrifying. Oh my
That
gosh.
is exactly what would happen.
That is exactly what's going to
It's a
happen.
I'm
great
imagining
video.
a
Go
really
watch
great
it.
sci-fi made-for-TV special, Drones versus Catapults.
Yes. And on that note, it's time to end. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Tech's Last Call. If you have any feedback or suggestions of stuff you'd like to see on the show, podcast at techslastcall.com, facebook.com/techslastcall, pinterest.com/techslastcall, or at techslastcall on the Twitters. However you find us, we'll be seeing you on the interwebs.